Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that powerful anthem, inviting us to sit with that deeply meaningful, difficult question of what it means to practice radical hospitality. Good morning. Oh, let's try it again. Good morning. Awesome. It is such a joy to be here with you this morning. I was so grateful and glad when Reverend Nancy reached out earlier in the spring to see if I would be willing to come preach, and I immediately said yes. And thank you, Reverend Karan, for your hospitality and welcome. So, in the fall of 1893, a remarkable event took place in Chicago, the World's Parliament of Religions. Now, the Parliament was planned as part of the Chicago's World's Fair. And Hindus, Jains, Buddhists, and Zoroastrians came from around the world to join Protestants, Catholics, Jews, Unitarians, and Universalists to share their religious views and beliefs and find common ground. Now, the predominant spirit of this historic event was a kind of welcoming inclusivism on the part of the Western, mostly Christian hosts. From every religion, however, speakers optimistically affirmed the universal principles that undergird all faiths. And people like Saku Soen from Japan, Anagarika Dhammapala from Sri Lanka, Pratap Chandra Mazumdar and Swami Vivekananda from India joined people like Frederick Douglass and Jenkin Lloyd Jones to dazzle audiences with their oratorical brilliance and spiritual depth, and really created this atmosphere of a new beginning as they were marching towards the 20th century, a beginning that would augur deeper cooperation and understanding between the world's faiths. Well, it didn't quite happen that way. And then 100 years rolled around, and when the centennial of the 1893 Parliament happened again in Chicago in 1993, the religious face of the United States had radically changed. That is, if in 1893 the world's religions came to Chicago, in 1993 the world's religions lived in Chicago. Now, this religious and cultural diversity, as you know, is not just a New York, California, Chicago, Washington, D.C. phenomenon. This is now a Main Street phenomenon. There are Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs in Lincoln, Nebraska, in Toledo, Ohio, and Jackson, Mississippi. Mosques, gurudwaras, and temples are very much part of the architectural landscape in places like Denver, Mobile, Tampa, Pittsburgh, and of course, Silver Spring. Now, this new religious and cultural diversity has profound implications for every aspect of American life today. The we, in we the people, has become increasingly complex, not only religiously, but also racially, culturally, and ethnically. Encounters between people of very different religious and cultural traditions now take place in the proximity of our own cities and neighborhoods, including our own beloved Bethesda and Montgomery County. Montgomery County, as you all know, is a majority-minority county, which is a point of pride to all of us. But as Diana Eck wisely reminded us, religious diversity alone does not mean we are being pluralistic. We celebrate diversity really well in Montgomery County, We celebrate diversity really well within Unitarian Universalism, but the deeper, more challenging question is, do we actually engage with diversity? So how we as a nation and as a faith begin to encounter and engage with one another in shaping a more positive and engaging pluralism and multiculturalism is one of the most important and challenging questions we face today. Pluralism, multiculturalism, diversity are not problems that threaten the consensus of a religious and moral mainstream as we are being asked to believe, but are extraordinary spiritual and social realities that are here to stay, whether people like it or not. They are now a fact and fabric of American society and cannot be ignored nor interpreted out of our vision. And if Unitarian Universalism is actually serious and committed to remain a vital and relevant religious movement, and not just a casual faith, as UUA President Reverend Susan Frederick Gray is challenging us to grow out of, we must learn to respond to, engage with, reflect, and embody the larger multicultural pluralistic reality that we are a part of. The demand of a multicultural pluralistic age demands a multicultural pluralistic, not a homogeneous and monocultural ministry. And if anything, we as a religious movement are well equipped, theologically at least, to not only face up to this task, but to also live into this reality. You see, in the 19th century, our religious ancestors said yes to Prophet Amos's question, can two walk together whether they be agreed or not? And it was this principle of religious tolerance that gave birth to a theology of pluralism that informs and guides our religious living today. And according to the late Reverend Forrest Church, our Unitarian heritage points to the existence of one light, one mystery, one reality, one God, one truth. But that single light shines through countless windows, each of which reveals an important portion, but only a portion of that light. Our Universalist heritage affirms the dignity and worth of those different windows and urges us to open our minds and our hearts and our spirits to the light and the truth each contains. One light, Unitarianism, shining through many windows, Universalism. Use that as your elevator speech the next time someone asks you, what is Unitarian Universalism? One light, many windows. I'm reminded of this ancient saying from the Rig Veda, which was written 4,000 years ago before Forrest Church, which speaks to the same truth actually. It goes, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. Truth is one. The wise ones call it by different names. Unity in diversity. Not just a slogan for us, but actually a living principle. Now, the novelist Salman Rushdie might not usually be considered a likely source for a quotation on multiculturalism or pluralism. You see, he has fashioned a genre which he has termed theological comedy, which seems more frontal in its satires. But hear his statement of intent, however you may assess his work. And this is about the satanic verses that he wrote many years ago. He writes, The Satanic Verses celebrates hybridity, intermingling, the transformation that comes of new and unexpected combination of human beings, cultures, ideas, politics, movies, songs. It rejoices in mongrelization and fears the absolutism of the pure, the hodgepodge. A bit of this and a bit of that is how newness enters the world. The Satanic Verses is for change by fusion, change by conjoining. It is a love song to our mongrel selves. Again, he confesses, like many millions of people, I am a bastard child of history. Perhaps we all are, black and white and brown, while leaking into one another like flavors when you cook. I say, let it continue. I submit to you that Unitarian Universalism is a love song to our mongrel selves. It is a faith that celebrates mongrelization, hybridization, and the abdication of the pure. There are no purebreds here. I guarantee you that. We are all in some way or other spiritual hybrids, theological crossbreeds, and religious mutts who have traveled different paths and found our way into this quirky, amazing faith. And we treasure our mixed identities. We cherish our struggle to live with integrity in the fault lines of our hyphenated identities while seeking wholeness in and through our common humanity. And I say, let it continue. But you see, my friends, it is not that simple, especially at a time when the emphasis these days is on pure racial types and monolingual people who can be categorized quite simply as either citizen or alien, friend or foe, elect or damned, patriot or terrorist. When we are being forced to conform to an ethnocentric morality that obliges us to take care only those who look, speak, talk, move, and live like us, where we are being asked to move toward a culture of sameness, as opposed to live more deeply into the reality of differences and differentness that need not divide us. The challenge of pluralism and multiculturalism is not just out there for us to encounter and engage with, but it also in here, where it poses some difficult questions about our cultural orientation and religious identity as Unitarian Universalists, shaped by our New England heritage and upper middle class liberal Protestant Euro-American values, which is a reality that we need to not just recognize, but hold up. It is nothing to be ashamed of, but a reality that we need to see for what it is and call it for what it is. We are a Euro-American ethnocentric faith. That is why Unitarian Universalism is called a quintessential American faith. And we Unitarian Universalists consider ourselves to be very open and respectful and welcoming of all people, which is what we all say at the beginning of services, as you did, as we do at Cedar Lane, and I'm sure other UU congregations do. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, whatever your beliefs, gender identity, nationality, immigration status, you are welcome here. But ask a theist or a Christian if they really feel welcomed here. Or ask a Republican, for that matter. Ask a UU who doesn't have a college degree or happens to work in a local diner if they feel welcome here. Here, not meaning River Road, but in our congregations. Ask people who are from a different culture or nationality or race if they feel a deeper sense of belonging in a UU congregation. These are difficult questions because the answers to them are not necessarily what we would want to hear. See, as a person of color, it has at times been a struggle for me to feel a deeper sense of belonging in this religion that I chose to belong to because of its predominantly white, upper middle class, Protestant cultural ethos. It is at times difficult to feel nourished by an aspiration rather than a reality. And yet, people like me stay put and keep showing up week after week because we know we belong here, because there are no purebreds here, as I told earlier, because we know that the struggle to belong is an integral part of the journey toward belonging. So people like me have stuck it out despite deep ambivalence and doubt, because Unitarian Universalism is the way we want to live our lives. And Unitarian Universalism is the way we want our children and their children's children to live their lives. You see, the promise of our faith is not that of a social club where everyone knows everyone's name or where everyone is expected to hold the knife and fork the right way. Nor is it a debating society where we like to get together to argue, to pontificate, to talk over rather than listen to, and tolerate each other without really getting to know one another. That is not the promise of Unitarian Universalism, especially in times such as these. The promise lies in the potential within our faith for authentic engagement that honors both our differences while celebrating our commonalities as members of one humanity. A religious community which reminds us that a beloved community is not built through achieving sameness and agreement all the time, but through achieving understanding and relationship, of learning the difficult spiritual discipline of being with one another in and through our discomfort, not just feeling warm and fuzzy all the time. Now, our liberal religious faith has struggled long and hard to create in our congregations that pluralistic and multicultural world of which we are a part. We know now more than ever about the deep spiritual work that it takes to combat institutionalized racism and other kinds of oppression and to embody a multicultural, pluralistic reality. We know more about what skills and which tools are most useful in helping our congregations commit to the work of sustaining change. But one of the things we need to learn and grow out of is not keeping these things in the intellectual realm as an expression of our individual autonomy and freedom of conscience, or as a byproduct of being a non-creedal, non-dogmatic faith. We have to take it out of just thinking through these things and actually learning to engage with them, as Diana Eck points out in the reading we heard earlier. So our challenge, to quote UU theologian Paul Razor, is to transform our pluralism of ideas into a pluralism of being. So how do we do this? That's the big question. Well, it cannot be done by your ministers on your behalf. That's not why they were called to serve. or by just a small group of people, the Racial Diversity Task Force, for example. No. It is something we all need to commit to doing together, however imperfectly, knowing that we are going to mess up on a regular basis, that we are going to constantly put both our feet into our mouths somehow. But it is a willingness to acknowledge the imperfection that is at the precious center of our faith. Because if we say we are a human faith, we are acknowledging the deeper reality. By being human, we are also imperfect, pursuing excellence, but imperfect nevertheless. And it will take deeper dialogue, real dialogue, more deep listening, and more accountability on the part of everyone to figure out ways to weave all the strands we will need to create to build and sustain the beloved community. And it will need a greater commitment on all our part to religious literacy, knowing more about each other's beliefs and practices, as well as that of our neighbors in our county. I'm reminded of a story that Diana Eck used to tell about religious illiteracy in the United States. She spearheaded the Pluralism project at Harvard, and one of her students who was researching for that project happened to be in Oklahoma City and went to the city council to talk to people about visiting some of the places of worship. And one of the people, I guess, who worked there was so excited by this, he brought her out to the street, pointed her in a direction towards the end of the street, and said, "Please go visit. There is a Jewish mosque right there." And so she did. It turned out to be a Greek Orthodox church. But that is the level of religious illiteracy we have. And we have a real opportunity to change that. It will need a willingness to probe and revise our own convictions in light of other religious perspectives. And it will need, above all else, to lead to common action in service of a life larger than our own. Now, I may have depressed you a bit this morning, but I want to say, despite all the travail and trouble, challenges and crises that threaten to engulf us, we are present at a sacred moment when new life is emerging from the womb of the past. And what now begins to breathe can become our shared future of mutual openness to accept others in all their differentness while affirming our common humanity, and to dismantle old structures of privilege and oppression and to build a more just and equitable society. But will we recognize this possibility? Will we be open to its opportunities to construct a more compassionate, sustainable, and interdependent way of being in right relationship with one another and our planet? Will we renew our commitment to truthfully and honestly examining and dismantling the legacy of institutionalized racism and white supremacy and violence has placed among us? Will we, as a faith, go boldly where no faith has gone before? These are the questions, the agendas, the exciting, irresistible invitations to each of us to abandon prejudgment, to resist the temptation to maintain the status quo, and learn to listen and hear one another more deeply. They are the reminders that we have a moral imperative to bring forth justice and peace into these times. And to that commitment, I say, amen. And the people say, amen. So may it be.